Hey, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you're at. My name is Can. I'm here with Lyngso. Thank you for joining us for our first class of 2021. This is probably by far the largest class we've had. We've got over 500 people interested, and we've got a couple hundred people on the wait list. So this class is being recorded and will be available after. I'll send out an email with the presentation as well as the recorded link, so you'll be able to watch it later on. And for those in the wait list, I know they probably can't hear me, but they'll also get the link as well. So welcome again. We have Kathleen and Lisa Putnam here for the citrus tree care, and they're both master gardeners, and this is one of their monthly master gardener classes. So I'm not going to take up any time. I will just say, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them via chat, and towards the end of the class, after the talk, we'll try to address most of the questions if we have time. If not, we'll go ahead and address them via email after the class. So without further ado, I'll turn over the Zoom to Kathleen and Lisa. Welcome both.
Thank you, Cam.
Yeah, thanks, Cam. So I'm Lisa Putnam. We're kind of the gardening sisters, and Kathleen will be teaching the class today. I might chime in from time to time with some personal experience, but Kathleen's done all the research. And we're both master gardeners, and that is a program through the University of California where we go through an educational process. And now if you have gardening questions that you want answered, we have a hotline, and the very last slide will go through the hotline. And if we don't get to your question today, we really encourage you to go ahead and ask your questions through the hotline. I think without further ado, Kathleen is a professional gardener. She does fruit trees, deciduous fruit trees, citrus, and vegetables in the.
Okay, so this class is about citrus, and I did the research for this class because whenever I did my deciduous fruit tree pruning, there was always citrus questions. So I decided to do a citrus class. Okay, so the basics of a citrus, any citrus tree you get, excuse me, has been grafted. There's the rootstock and then the scion. And the scion is the top part, the variety that you want, and the rootstock is probably the trifoliate, which is, oh, this is just a fun fact. The citrus are actually a berry. So are grapes, currants, tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplant, bananas, and what we call berries are not, except for blueberries. And this is another fun fact. I just like fun facts. Mold is a fungi that eat sugars. Okay, so roots, the first year of your tree's life is the most important for root development, and you don't want to stress it. And the most important thing is watering, and we will get into that. Oh, I went the wrong way. Shoot. Sorry, people. There we go. Okay, so this is back to the basics. So here is the graft, and anything above here is the scion, which is the fruit you want. And this is the rootstock. And see this leaf? See how there's, the reason they call it trifoliate is there's 3 little leaves. So if you see this, and it will also have big thorns on it, you want to cut that off. It's flying dragon is another rootstock, but again, it's the trifoliate leaf. And see these big thorns? They're quite nasty. you want to cut those off. And this is the fruit the trifoliate makes. It's not very tasty. So during the first 3 to 4 years after planting a citrus, your fruit production will be very light. This is known as the non-bearing years. And this is when your roots are really developing. And if you're going to do any pruning, you would prune at this point for structure. I live in Santa Cruz, and so this slide is about if you live on the coast. And some fruit require more heat than others. And Meyer lemon doesn't require a lot of heat, and they are delicious and they're expensive in the stores. So I personally think everyone should have a Meyer lemon. But this slide shows the heat needed for the fruit to ripen. And you can see down here, Meyer lemon needs the least heat to ripen. Lemon bears lime. So if you live in a hot area, you can plant anything. But if you live in an area that doesn't get really hot in the summer, you're going to want to stay probably below oranges. Site selection. Fruit trees need sun. They need 10 hours of direct sunlight year round. More is better. Don't plant it in your lawn because you can't water it properly in your lawn. And if you are in an area where it doesn't get really hot, south side, south facing, or the south side by a dark wall will help with your heat. I moved down here about 3 years ago, and I put in a Travoda orange that was in part shade. And it got infested with scales, aphids, leaf miners, and ants. So I pulled it out and then I put in a buddleia. So they really do need full sun. If they don't get what they need, they're going to get all kinds of problems. This is my Meyer lemon in full sun, and it has snails that I pick out sometimes, but other than that, it's a super healthy tree. And if you live in an area that you get a hard freeze or a frost, this is a list by temperature of trees that can take a frost. The temperatures are approximate, but it gives the place of origin. And you guys will get this presentation, so you don't need to take notes. But pretty much everything can't take a really hard, I mean, like a Meyer lemon, you can go down to 22, which is pretty good. I don't think we ever get that cold, but you know, if you have Buddha's hand, bear's limes, the really tropical stuff, anything below 32, you're going to get damage. And so if a hard frost is predicted, you're going to want to water your plant deeply so it's really hydrated, and cover with a frost blanket. And if you notice, I was actually at a client's yesterday, and she had her frost blankets like this, where they were tied up at the bottom. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is have your frost blanket go all the way over and just weigh it down, because the heat from the ground will help when the frost comes and keep the plant warmer.
Kathleen, I've got a question. I was told never to have the frost blanket touch the leaves because the frost blanket can freeze and then it freezes the leaves. So I've put my frost blankets on a like a frame over them. Have you ever heard that?
I have not, but that sounds reasonable. Okay. Although it sounds like more work.
It is more work.
But if you're going to have it, I don't know, actually. So, yeah. But also if you do have frost damage on your plant, don't prune it off until the danger of your last freeze, because that damage will actually protect the inside of the tree from further damage. And if you do prune it, you might get new growth, and that will then get frost damaged. So that'll further stress the tree. Planting, plant in sun. If you live in a cold area, you can plant indoors, but you still need 10 hours of sunlight. Citrus don't like wind and they like heat. They're tropical. Oops, sorry guys. Oh, I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, there we go. All right, when you plant a citrus, that's my dog, sorry. The hole should be twice as wide as the root ball, and you want the depth to be so that you see the top of the roots, the very top. And then you place it in the ground. And this picture, I took a class on bare root pruning, or bare root planting, sorry. And this is where the tree was in the nursery.
Wow.
Yeah, scary. So that's why you want to wash off and find where your root ball really starts. And this is actually true of all woody perennials, not just citrus, but very often what happens is this starts out, oops. Oh, I'm messing this up. Sorry, guys. This starts out as a very, a little tiny plant in a 4-inch container, and then it goes into a gallon container, and then a bigger container, and then a bigger container, and it just keeps getting buried further and further. That's how the nurseries do it. So when you get any woody perennial, any tree, you really want to wash off the root ball, and you can let what you wash off go into the hole you've dug. So then you put your plant in the hole, you cover it with your native soil. Don't put anything in that hole other than native soil. On top of the hole, you're gonna top dress it with compost. You're gonna throw out some cover crop seeds, which I will get into later, and then compost, and then mulch. But you don't want to put it, you want to leave a ring probably about 6 inches away from the trunk of the tree, because you don't want, this part of the plant is not meant to be wet. It'd be like putting a pile of wood against your house, which would be bad.
Is that a typical what the roots look like of a citrus? Because that's a big mass of roots.
This is not a citrus.
Oh.
So, and this is also something that's been root bound.
Yeah, okay.
Hopefully your root ball doesn't look like this.
Okay.
But citrus does have fibrous roots, much more so than deciduous fruit trees. They have more shallow fibrous roots. So, your roots are going to be somewhat matted and little fibrous roots. Oops. Okay. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. So the upper surface of the root ball you want to see, it's like this. You want to see the root flare. Citrus have many shallow roots, so you don't want to cultivate around it. You want to hand weed or hula hoe or mulch. Mulch is great for citrus. And obviously, right after you plant, water it. And you're going to want to keep it wet. Oh, dang it. Okay, irrigation. Sorry, that's my dog. Timely irrigation is essential, but I see more citrus being overwatered than underwatered. People love their citrus to death in general. So irrigation water should not come in contact with the tree trunk, because you will get Phytophthora. root rot, and gummosis, which will kill your tree. The trunk and the bud union should stay dry. As a rule of thumb, water the top few inches of soil are dry, but the rest of the root zone moist. So your young trees are going to need to be watered more often because they don't have as extensive a root system. I water my trees the first couple years twice a week for probably 20 to 25 minutes. Now I water them once a week for a half hour.
Okay. Kathleen, do you plant them high like you do a deciduous fruit tree? Oh, you're muted, Kathleen. Somehow you got muted.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I plant them, especially if you have clay soil. That's why I talked about the root flare showing.
Okay.
I don't necessarily put them up on a big mound.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see pictures of my tree. They're not really mounded, but the root flare is off. It is up.
Okay.
If a citrus is water stressed, I get the question a lot that my fruit is dry. It's not juicy. So when a tree becomes water stressed, it pulls the water out of the fruit for it to be able to photosynthesize. So if your fruit is dry, you have a watering issue. I learned how to, there we go. I learned how to use my mouse. That's why I'm messing up on these slides. Sorry, guys. Citrus need little pruning. I hardly ever prune my citrus. What I did do is I pruned it up so the skirt is not touching the ground, because that's how the slugs and the snails got up into my tree. But during the first 2 years, you can select your permanent scaffold branching and the structure. Whenever you see suckers, which is that trifoliate stalk we were talking about, you want to cut those where they originate. Water sprouts, you don't necessarily want to cut out. Water sprout is a branch that goes straight up, which lemons are famous for. And they have thorns on them, which is just the tree's way of protecting its succulent new growth. Those thorns will eventually disappear and that will become a fruit-bearing branch.
Oh.
So you don't necessarily want to remove all your water suckers. You can if they bother you, but they're not bad. The best way to remove unwanted limbs is cut them back where they started. Cut them off where they originate from the branch. Lemon trees generally need more pruning just because they water sprout like crazy. And this is just, when you do prune, you want to prune in the right place. And this is the branch ridge collar right here. You can see it right here. That has meristem tissue in it, which is tissue that will heal this wound. If you made a cut right here, that wound would never heal. And after pruning, if those limbs are exposed to direct sunlight, you're going to want to protect them with a paint. It's kind of a whitewash. It's like sunscreen for trees. And it's a water-based latex paint diluted 50-50 with water. Citrus have very thin bark and they sunburn easily. You may want to thin your canopy if it's too dense. They say if you can't see dappled sunlight on the ground, you should do a little canopy thinning, just because your fruit won't ripen as well. Pruning overgrown trees you might kill it. But if you really want to do it, you don't want to take off more than a third of the tree. And you want to do it in spring. And this is a stub cut. This will allow disease to get in. This is a flush cut. So this will also allow disease to get in because you've cut off the meristem tissue, and this is just right. So if you reduce the tree, if it's too big and you take off too much, you might kill it. So try to only take off a third of it, but leave some of the tall branches to draw water up and allow photosynthesis to happen. And also to give foliage cover so you don't sunburn. Mulch, do it. They've actually done studies that if you mulch your navel oranges, you will have 25% more production and you'll conserve water. And you can mulch with almost anything. And the benefits of mulching are worth the input. It suppresses nematodes and phytophthora, improves your soil and your soil organic matter, and you get better production. Alternate bearing. A lot of people complain that one year they have a ton of fruit. Alternate bearing means one year you have a heavy crop and the next year a very light crop. And UC Irvine has done a ton of studies about alternate bearing, and there's no answer to it. Just know that it might happen, especially with Valencia oranges. They're famous for it.
Huh. So there's no, like if you
can't thin the fruit or prune, or they've done all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
And it's just going to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Fruit drop. Most of the flowers on your tree, 95%, are not going to become fruit. So just leave them be. I thin my fruit when a branch becomes too heavy, or I'll prop up the branch. The first 3 years that you do get fruit, it's probably not going to taste very good. It takes a while for that tree to ramp up and make delicious fruit. And Lisa and I were talking about this just before we started this, is just because your orange tree and the oranges have turned orange does not mean they're ripe. So if you have an orange tree that's loaded with orange fruit, take one off and taste it. And if it's not sweet yet, leave them on. They hang on. They'll look ripe now, like January, but they won't be ready to harvest until what, Lisa, March?
March. I mean, this is a Washington navel. Two things to what Kathleen was talking about. Yeah, it's at a house that we rent out, and it was just loaded with oranges. And before Christmas, the tenant took off every single orange. And I know that particular fruit tree, it won't be ripe until, the fruit won't be sweet until March. So it's too bad. It probably had, at least 300 oranges on it. And anyway, they're all going to go to waste unless you like a really, really sour orange. And
It's
the other
like fruit.
yeah. And that same tree, to Kathleen's point here, we planted the tree and it was a good 3 years before it even produced one orange. And now we easily have well over 300 oranges a year from that tree. But at about year 2, even year 3, we're like, let's just take this tree out. This is ridiculous. It's not producing. And then like year 4, it was just loaded, and it's been loaded ever since. And they're good oranges if you let them get ripe, but that's more of a March harvest. It's not a December, January harvest.
Yeah, and they don't ripen off the tree. They have to be on the tree to ripen. Yellow leaves in winter. So when the temperatures drop below 55 degrees, and I wasn't sure what our audience was, so I put Celsius in here as well, which that is 12.7 degrees Celsius. The trees go into a semi-dormancy. And even if the nutrients are available in the soil, the tree doesn't take them up. So a lot of citrus get yellow leaves in winter. They should, when it warms up, those leaves should green up. If they don't, then you might have a problem. But if your tree is yellow in the winter, don't worry about it. Nitrogen is the biggest requirement that can be deficient in citrus. And the tree, nitrogen is mobile. So the tree will take leaves from it'll take nitrogen from the older leaves and give it to the new leaves. So your older leaves will be yellow if you're nitrogen deficient. This is the UC recommendation of how much nitrogen to give. And I put down here nitrogen fixing plants, which you can use instead. And this is yellowing due to nitrogen deficiency. This is mottling due to manganese deficiency. This is yellowing due to magnesium deficiency. This is chlorotic area because of a zinc deficiency. And here is iron deficiency. So you can see there's a lot of deficiencies, and it's difficult to know what you are deficient in just by looking at the leaf. And it could also be your pH. You can see there's a sweet spot right in here at about 7. But if your pH is higher or lower, some of the nutrients are not available to the plant. But luckily, there's an easy answer for all of these deficiencies. Cover crop. I am a huge proponent of cover cropping. Different plants do different things. Like mustards will go and scavenge all of those nutrients that your plant needs. Mustards are wonderful for it. Daikon radish, just plain mustard, anything in the mustard family scavenges nutrients. And when you kill the plant, then those nutrients are released. So if you're going to cover crop, you want 60% flowers, 40% grasses, and 1 legume, at the most one legume. You really don't need to add legumes. There are free living bacteria that fix nitrogen that they've just recently discovered. They're not exactly sure how it works, but they know that they exist. So the benefits of cover cropping. Cover crop is simply any plant used to protect the soil and feed the life below. Cover crops improve the physical properties and structure of a soil. They increase organic matter, protect soil surface, improve water infiltration and retention, cycle and sequester nutrients and carbon, increase nitrogen levels, provide habitat and food for beneficial insects, suppress weeds, and reduce or eliminate the need for purchased fertilizers. So as you can see, I love cover crops. And this is a really nice mix of cover crops, and it shows the different root depths and the life in your soil, which I'm not going to get into the soil food web, but cover crops feed the soil food web, which then feeds your plant. So this is I have a little tangerine in my backyard next to the waterfall, and I just threw out a handful of, it was actually just a can of like grandma's favorite flowers or something. And this little guy did fine. I cut all these down. You can see how it looks now. And here's some more cover crop that's growing. And I've never fertilized any of my citrus. All I do is cover crop and mulch. Okay, on to pest disease and stresses. Citrus are pretty good about diseases. They're not, a lot of deciduous fruit trees have a lot of issues that citrus don't have, but there's one biggie, and that is HLB, or citrus greeting disease. Huanglongbing, I think is how you pronounce it. It's fatal. And it is spread by the Asian citrus psyllid. As it feeds on the leaves, it carries the bacteria and it spreads it. In Florida, it's a huge problem. In fact, I know last year they sprayed antibiotics on their trees like 5 times. Which, I mean, we all know the problems of the overuse of antibiotics, and they're now spraying them from planes on their citrus fields. But it is in California. Here are, if this is the Asian citrus psyllid, and this is, if you see these little white squigglies, you know you have them. This is them, and this is what your leaf will look like if you have them. Almost all psyllids leave little bumps like that on leaves. And that's, their little butts stick up. They're pretty easy to know what they look like. You can see its little butt sticking up. There's a close-up of their, I guess that's their excrement. I'm actually not sure. Some hosts, and I just learned this yesterday, some citrus are much more susceptible to it than others. The mandarin, the sweet orange, and tangelo are really susceptible to this disease. Other citrus are not as susceptible. And then there are other hosts that are in the citrus family, which is it starts with an R. So it can be more than just your citrus, but know that some citrus are much more likely to get it than others. And it is worldwide. Brazil got nailed, and Florida has it really bad. We also have it in California. It started out here in the tropical where citrus began, but you can see Australia doesn't have it yet. So that's good. In California, we have it down. It's mostly in Southern California where most of our citrus is grown because they don't have a frost. But then they found some in Fresno, and they have now found it in the Bay Area. I should say they have found the psyllid in the Bay Area. They haven't found the disease. So this is areas where they have found the psyllids. So it's coming. And I know in Southern California, if they find, let's go back. In Southern California, if your tree has it, they take your tree, they cut it down, and it's a huge radius. It's like a half-mile radius that they go and cut down everyone's citrus. Because if this gets into all of our major citrus growers, it's just going to wipe out our citrus industry, which is a huge industry. So this is a big deal. Other insects that you might find on your citrus or scale, I have found that this is, if you're not in full sun, is when you're going to have these kind of problems. That the tree I have in full sun, or the trees I have in full sun, I don't have any insect problems because they're healthy trees. Scale are tough to control because they have hard shells. So the only time you can control them is either leave them alone and let the natural enemies get them, but keep the ants out of your tree. Or when they're crawlers, there's a little life cycle when the scales are moving and they don't have their hard shell, when you could spray them with horticultural oil. But mostly rely on natural enemies. That's what I do. Citrus leaf miner. It's a tiny little fly that lays an egg between the layers in the leaf. So there's really no control because it's inside the leaf. They're kind of cool. They really don't do much damage. It's not, it's kind of unsightly, but it's not that big a deal. If you find it and it bothers you, take the leaves off and throw them in the green bin. Cottony cushion scale, they don't have the same hard scale of the armor scale. So just let the natural enemies control them. Brown garden snails. If you have snails up in your tree, the only thing you can do is handpick. I didn't realize I had any until I did a little bit of skirt pruning on my Meyer lemon, and I was on the ground looking up and I saw tons of snails. So I pick them sometimes, but that's the only thing you can do. You can make your garden less friendly to snails, which is what these 3 bullet points are, which I'm not going to read. But the takeaway from this slide is you have to hand pick them.
Or get a goose.
Get a goose or a duck.
Or duck, yeah.
Do chickens go after snails?
They'll go after a slug, but I think you'd have to take the snail out of the shell.
Yeah. What was that movie, The Biggest Little Farm?
Yeah, and it just put a bunch of ducks, or was it? Yeah, I guess ducks in their orchard.
Yeah, in their citrus orchard, and the ducks ate all those snails. Snails love citrus. That's it.
Oh my gosh, that's their whole presentation?
That's it.
Oh, well, we should take questions.
Yeah. We have lots of time for questions. Yeah, I said it'd be about 45 minutes.
Oh, you were right.
Oh, wait, I have to go. Here's my references. Here's more references.
Wow.
Yeah, I did a lot of research. I know it doesn't look like it because it's short, but it kind of sums it up. Thank you, Lyngso. And here is the Master Gardener information.
Oh, terrific.
I actually don't know. I know that this helpline number is still valid and the email is valid. I'm not sure if these numbers are still valid post-COVID.
Yeah, so you can call and you can leave a message and a Master Gardener will get back to you if you leave a message.
I'll leave that back up.
Do you want me or do you want Can to read off some questions for you, Kathleen?
I think Can go through and Can, are you there?
Oh, I don't see.
Oh, we're too fast.
Oh, okay.
I'm happy to go through some of the questions, Lisa, unless you want to read them off.
I'll let you go ahead and yeah, that's fine if you'd like to go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to just, I'm not sure if we'll have time to address all of them, but we've got plenty of time for the class. So we'll go ahead and address some of these here. So let's see. I'm going to go back up.
I think
Okay.
106. Okay.
So I have a kumquat tree that's close to 10 years old in a planter, and it bloomed once with one fruit ripening. What would be the issue?
I'd maybe ask Donna, how much sun does it get? Is it getting 10 hours of sun? Well, I would think fruit production has to do with sun.
Yeah, and not flowering. Yeah, I would think sun.
So maybe could it be a young plant? Well, it's 10 years old in a planter.
Yeah, 10 years old. After a few years, it should be producing if it's getting enough sun and enough water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not flower, citrus are self-fertile, so they don't need another citrus to pollinate them. So, my answer is, I don't know.
So the next two questions from a couple different people is, one is the dwarf Meyer lemons. It
Yeah.
never blooms. And then when they do get a small lemon, it's like a size of a pea and it just turns brown and probably falls off. So it's a common occurrence. I've heard with other folks too.
I would say sun again.
Yeah, maybe if these people, if Jim and Carla and Donna could write in the chat how much sun their citrus are getting, if they're getting 10 hours of sun. And I know Kathleen emphasized this, but sun means when you're outside and you look at your hand or the leaf of the tree, sunlight is hitting that leaf. It's not dappled. It's not, I can't tell you how many times Kathleen and I have gone to a prospective client and they've said, oh yeah, I've got full sun. It's all day long sun. And we go and it's like there's a redwood tree next to it or there's an oak tree. You don't have full sun. And citrus really do need full sun.
Yeah, they need 10 hours. And 10 hours is a long time. But yeah, they need 10 hours of sun to be productive. So not a fence, not anything. They are there in the middle with nothing blocking the sun.
Okay. So let me go up here. So then when would you say is the best time to plant a citrus tree?
Soon as the frost damage is over, I would do it as early spring as possible.
I can say for Mid-Peninsula, April 15th is, for Woodside and Portola Valley, April 15th is usually our last frost date.
Yeah. If you don't have a frost issue, you could plant anytime, but fall would be good too, because then you'll get the winter rains. But if you're in an area where you could have possible frost damage, I would, as soon as the last frost danger is over, I'd plant.
Okay. As far as the citrus species go, they relatively need lots of heat. And I guess at one point you had said the mandarins will grow on the coast, and the chart says it needs more heat. So will mandarins, are they capable of growing on the coast?
Oh, I'm going the wrong way. You know what? Let's go to that chart.
Yeah, because maybe you misspoke. Oops.
There we go. Mandarin oranges. I wouldn't. On the coast, like Half Moon Bay coast.
Right.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
assuming there were a couple questions regarding Half Moon Bay coast, but foggy coast perhaps, any coastline essentially.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even do a sweet orange on the coast. They say that Trevota orange does well on the coast. Four Winds has been working on developing, a sweet orange that will do better in cooler climates. And it's supposed to be the Trevota. I've gotten mixed reviews on whether or not that's true. So like I said earlier, anything below sweet orange, I think you could do a Rangpur lime, lime quat, orange quats, lemons, beer's lime, and a lemon Meyer. You could definitely do a Meyer lemon. But if you're looking for sweet, I don't think you're gonna get it on the coast.
Okay. So the next question is from south of Florida, and they've sprouted, lemon trees from seeds. but they have yellow dots all over. And they're all in the ground and they water it almost every day. So what should they be doing to prevent those yellow dots?
I'd almost need to see a picture of the yellow dots. Does it look like the slide where it showed the, if they're in Florida, they might have the psyllids, which kind of make dots. Can I leave this slide?
Sure.
Yeah.
You guys like how I bump around? There we go. If it looks like this, you have Asian citrus psyllid. I honestly can't say I know enough about citrus to say whether or not it would grow from a seed and produce what you want it to be. I know like avocados don't necessarily, or it takes them years and years and years to bear. Lisa, do you know, have you ever heard of anyone successfully? I know they're all grafted.
Yeah, they're all, I mean, what I would say to this person, Alexandra, is if you want lemons, go buy a grafted lemon tree and plant it. They're also watering it every day. I would think the poor thing is just absolutely waterlogged.
Yeah.
I would cut way back on the water. I don't know Florida well enough, but they get rain when we don't in California. So they get summer rain and we don't. And so I don't know how often you have to water it, but I think it's really, really overwatered. And I think with a lot of these things, avocado is another good example. You know, it's fun to grow from a seed and it's kind of a nice science experiment. But if you're looking to get production and you actually want lemons, then, you know, for $20, $30, you know, maybe a little bit more. But I think you're just better off going and buying a grafted tree.
Yeah. And I know Florida has Asian citrus psyllids everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they get rain a lot. They get a lot of rain.
They get a lot of summer rain. I don't know if you have to water citrus in Florida. I don't know enough to say, but I can say watering anything every day is not good.
Yeah, that's too much. Plants need oxygen as well as water. So if your roots are waterlogged all the time, your plant is going to die. And the symptoms of overwatering are very similar to underwatering. You get wilt, but yeah, that's way too much water.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
So
cat taunting my dogs.
we're gonna skip some questions here because I think we've addressed them. So let's talk about native soil with heavy clay. Any amendments to that while planting citrus?
You never want to amend the planting hole because all you do there is create a soil interface that is going to decrease your drainage. Because as the water, if you have really good soil here and then clay soil here, the water's going to stop right there and it's not going to drain at all. So you want to plant your hole twice as wide. You could rip.
Oh, Kathleen, you're muted all of a sudden.
Kathleen, are you
Okay.
with us?
So you could broad fork before you plant, broad fork the area if you have compaction, but I would just plant high. I would plant on a mound. So rather than digging a hole this deep, I would probably go about this deep and twice as wide as the root ball, and put the roots, you know, put the plant in it, but let the roots be showing up above, and then put soil on top of it so it's up, so that you have good drainage.
Yeah, good drainage. And if you feel like you need to amend your soil, then as Kathleen said at the beginning, then you can put some compost on top, but not in the hole, and then put some mulch on top of that to keep the compost protected. And that's the best way to amend your soil, is to let the life in the soil come get that compost and bring it down where the roots are.
And I would cover crop with daikon radishes, which would break up your heavy clay. It would help with water penetration. Plus, they scavenge nutrients, and when you cut off the tops, they release nitrogen and feed your plant. In fact, I was in an orchard yesterday. Was that yesterday? Where it's really heavy clay soil. And I said to my sister, we need to cover crop this whole field with daikon radishes, which we're going to do as soon as it rains again in California. Hopefully it will rain again.
Yeah.
Yeah, crossing our fingers there.
I know, right?
So let's talk about growing citrus in pots and containers. The first question is, how do you keep the water off the trunk if you're growing it in a pot or a container? And then the second question is, can you grow citrus like indoors in containers?
You can grow citrus indoors. You're gonna have to make sure you get enough sunlight, which is gonna be difficult. It's gonna have to be in a south-facing window that gets good sun, or like if you had a patio, that'd be ideal, or a balcony. But you do need 10 hours of sunlight, whether it's indoors or outdoors. If it's in a pot, you would just water the soil. So I'm not sure why you'd be getting the trunk wet.
Yeah.
I do know that in containers, you're probably every 5 years or so, you're gonna have to pull it out and do some root pruning and add new soil.
So maybe because the small tree might be actually bushy, and regarding that, there's another question on how to prune Meyer lemons, because it seems to want to bush with the branches near the ground, with upper branches arching downwards toward, rather than upwards.
Yeah.
So are there tree forms and bush forms of citrus?
It depends on how you prune it. I should have taken a picture of my Meyer lemon before I pruned it, because
Well, that must be a Meyer lemon on the left.
yeah.
My Meyer lemon is a big bush, and I know Kathleen talked about skirt pruning, which is just taking some of those lower scaffolding branches off, so it's so they're not hanging. There's your lemon. Oh, that's after you pruned it then.
This is after I pruned it. Before I pruned it, there were branches touching the ground.
Yeah.
And I actually laid on my back, and I got in here, and they call it skirting it up, because this would be the skirt, and I just pruned it up.
Mm-hmm. That looks good.
Yeah.
And
I actually recommend that you don't have branches touching the ground. I mean, like this branch here, you could cut off like right in there, and it would be fine.
Yeah. And
But yeah, they do. I mean, this Meyer lemon was like full on shrub before I got in there and pruned it.
yeah. And you can prune it to be more of a standard. I've got a couple of orange trees that I've pruned off all the bottom, and so you can fully see the trunk, and it looks more like a standard tree with the trunk going up and then a big round lollipop canopy.
Yeah, but then you need to be careful of sunburn, because its natural habit is to protect its bark with foliage.
Yeah.
So if you do prune it so you're exposing the bark, you need to put a whitewash on it because the bark is really susceptible to sunburn.
Yeah. And I have noticed, they say, I thought, citrus put fruit on the outside, not in the interior. And I'd say that's pretty true of my orange trees, but my lemon, there's lemons everywhere. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to stick your hand in there and get, I mean, they're very, very productive.
Yeah, well, citrus produce on new growth,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but they continue to grow.
Yeah.
So if you have like this guy inside here, it was on the outside when it was blooming in a little tiny fruit, but then it kept growing.
Yeah.
So when you prune, you're probably going to be cutting off some of your fruit when you prune, and you just have to eat it. You just have to, do it.
Yeah.
So on the same subject of pruning, what's the difference between like a sucker and a water sprout? And is a water sprout above the grafted line?
Yeah. So here's a good example. See this guy going straight up? And I don't know if you can see, but there's thorns on here. This is a water sprout. If I had a sucker is the root stock coming up. And that's where you see the trifoliate. Let's see, no, it's not letting me.
Right.
Are you able to make your pointer red, Kathleen, or change the color of it, sort of?
I don't know how.
Okay.
But but if you see this, if you see the trifoliate leaf and big thorns, that is a sucker, and you want to cut that off at the base of the tree. Sometimes you need to follow it down and find out where it's coming, but you will see it like this. So here's your rootstock, here's the trifoliate, and then here is the scion. So this is the fruit bearing. Anything above this line is good. Anything below this line you want to cut off. And it's this apparent when you look at your tree, what the rootstock and the scion look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of your water sprouts will have thorns, and that's okay. Those thorns will go away eventually, but the trifoliate will always have thorns, and they're big and mean and nasty.
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the pests, excuse me.
Okay.
This person has black soot and they treated it with neem oil, but the tree is so large they can't get to all the leaves. So any
Yeah.
other ways that you can treat white flies and soot?
If you have white flies, you're probably overwatering. If I had white flies on my tree, I would be investigating why I had white flies. The sooty mold is from the excrement of your insects that falls on the leaves and becomes moldy. It's like a sticky sweet honeydew that comes out of the rear end of the insect. So white flies generally, it's too moist. I would cut back on the watering and I would mulch. And that would probably get rid of your white flies. I don't necessarily like neem oil because it's a fungicide and it's going to kill the life in your soil. You could use a horticultural oil. I think that's less damaging to your soil, but I would investigate why you have white flies first.
Okay, so that was the other question is, can they use horticultural oil to kill pests and insects by spraying the tree?
Yeah, and I would add a little bit of surfactant to it, which you can buy at the nursery, or you can put a couple drops of dish soap and it will stick better.
What about, have you heard of the bark protection product from, I think, Ivy Organics or For Organics? And is it worth it to use rather than diluted latex paint? I'm assuming this is after you prune.
I have not heard of that product, but paint's pretty cheap and it works.
Okay. So to the taste of this person has a mandarin orange, and it's a little tart. So what can be done to increase the sweetness of the citrus fruits?
Leave it on the tree longer.
Yeah, it just means it's not ripe yet.
Just because it's the color doesn't mean it's ripe. And I had a client yesterday that was telling me he wants limes. And the limes in the store are hard green little things, which are not limes. If you let limes ripen on your tree, they turn yellow and they're very juicy and they're not as tart.
Yeah. How long can you leave a lemon sitting on your tree or any citrus after it's ripe? How long can it store on the tree?
It stays on for a long time.
And it doesn't dry out. It doesn't, I mean, could you leave an
Not if
orange
you're
on there?
watering No, the only time it would dry out is if you're not watering your tree properly and the
Okay.
tree needs that water. You know, they'll drop off eventually. The tree will drop them.
Yeah.
But until the tree starts dropping your fruit, it's good on the tree. And you can also, especially like with a lemon, if it's a little bit soft and it pulls off easily, it's probably ripe.
Yeah.
Do you find that true of your oranges, Lisa?
Yeah, my oranges, you just have to be way more patient than you think you need to be. I'm thinking of my Meyer lemon this last year. It had so many lemons and it just took us months to go through them. Eventually they became soft and not good. But that was probably, my guess is 3 or 4 months after they were ready for harvest. So it did stay on the tree for quite a little while before it came kind of, the skin's no longer glossy, it's dull and it's a little soft to the touch. Now we still ate them. I'm sure it's still fine. What I finally did though is we picked them all and I just juiced them all and then I put them into basically ice cube trays and we're still using our lemons, lemon juice from last year and our crop hasn't come in yet for this year. So you can have fresh lemon juice year round. It just takes a little bit of effort.
My Meyer lemon has fruit on it all the time.
All year round. Okay.
Yeah. And same in San Francisco, that lemon I had, it had fruit on it. I mean, at certain times of year there was more fruit,
Yeah.
but there was always some fruit all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a particular time to harvest different kinds of citrus? Do you recommend, certain months for certain varieties of citrus?
This morning I was going to try to find a harvest chart and then I forgot. Sorry. You could go to fourwinds.com, I think is the website. It's probably in my resources. They might have one, I'm not sure. But, it's winter, spring is when most citrus is ready.
Yeah. And I think Four Winds does have a harvest chart because when I planted my mandarins, I picked an early, a middle, and a late. And I had to have found that on Four Winds.
Oh, that was brilliant of you.
Yeah, thank you. I got the idea from you.
So this person wants to plant a number of citrus trees, but the area where they want to plant won't be ready for another year. They're asking if they can start now with the containers and then move them to the permanent location in about 1 to 2 years, or would they be better off waiting until permanent location and then, plant them?
It's an interesting question. you know, you could go ahead and are they going to put them? Oh, you can't really ask them questions. If that person is on the screen, can they unmute?
Let me allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay, so if they are there, I think it's Steve Selleck who had asked the question.
Okay.
So
Hi,
there-
yes, I'm here.
Hey, Steve, are you going to put them in a bigger container or just leave them in the container they came in?
Could do either, but I was thinking of putting them into a bigger container.
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
I just
That
figured
would
I'd get a head start before I could put them in their permanent location.
Yeah, I mean, you would get a jump on when you're going to be able to get fruit.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
Yeah,
Thanks
I
very
think
much.
as long as you're going to put them in a bigger container and you know, make sure the bigger container you put them in, that you wash off the roots so they're not too deep in the container.
Mhm.
And then do that again when you put them in the ground. And I think you're golden.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. I had a later question too, if I can jump in. Have you ever heard of growing Sorrento or Amalfi lemons here in the US or in California specifically, or is that just not possible?
Huh, I don't know.
I don't know either. I've grown a Lisbon lemon before, a Portugal lemon, but I don't know about Amalfi or Sorrento lemons.
Probably, I mean, we're similar climate, right?
To Italy. Yeah, it's right by Capri.
perhaps
Yeah,
create
I
a
haven't
cliff
been
in
able to
its-
find anybody. I haven't been able to find anyone selling them anywhere.
I've never seen them for sale before.
You know, I would do a little bit of research on, I mean, I know the Amalfi Coast is full of lemons, but I don't know what type of lemon it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I'd go to
haven't been able to figure that out.
Yeah.
Four Winds website. I think if anybody knows, it'd be Four Winds.
Yeah,
Okay,
send them an
thank you.
email. Maybe
Will
they,
do. Thanks very much.
maybe they could like, it would be a tax write-off to go to the Amalfi Coast and get a lemon. I'll go.
Sign me up.
Okay, so moving on to pest issues again. Roof rats love oranges. Any recommendations to discourage rats from eating the oranges? I'm sure the same goes with, you know, other pests and vermins.
Yeah, I still have a beautiful lemon in San Francisco. And when you have a rat eat a rat, they eat the peel and you see a lemon hanging there with no peel. It's the first time it happened to me, I was like, what the heck? You know, it's just regular pest control. I pruned it back so it wasn't touching the roof. And I put traps along the fence. And I just tried to trap them. Other than that, you know, it's the rats. And in fact, I think starting now, regular homeowners no longer have access to anticoagulant rat poison. I think it's a new law.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Means trapping.
yeah, trapping, killing, sorry. Gardening is all about killing. It's true.
That's not really true.
Get a cat.
Yeah, get a cat. That's what I did.
Get a cat. And then I did suggest that in a class, and it did make a lot of environmentalists mad. But I have two cats, and I have a collar that goes around their neck. It looks like a clown collar. And my cats, by and large, do not get birds. I have one cat every once in a while that still gets a bird, but I had a cat who was killing probably 2 or 3 birds a week. And for the last 7 years, she hasn't killed one bird with that collar on.
Tell them where you got it.
Well, I got my first one at the Audubon Society, but I don't think they sell them anymore. But if you Google cat collar or like colorful cat collar, you can, you know, whatever, they're $10, $12, something like that. And they really do work. So I'd suggest them for all outdoor cats.
Okay, so what causes curling of citrus leaves? The whole leaves curl inwards.
Mhm.
So I guess they're just wondering what causes that.
It could be cold. Some of it just seems to happen. I don't know.
Okay, what about mold on leaves?
Well, again, that's probably sooty mold, and that's from the excrement of an insect. I would check the trunk and see if you have ants coming up and down your trunk, because you might have aphids or scales in the tree that are excreting honeydew, which causes sooty mold. If you can keep the ants out of your tree, which you could dust the ground with diatomaceous earth, which helps with ants, or you could put like painter's tape around the trunk and then put that sticky stuff, what's it called, Lisa?
Tanglefoot?
Tanglefoot on top of, I don't like putting tanglefoot directly on the trunk because ants eventually make a bridge over it and then it's just a big messy thing. But if you just put like the blue tape around the trunk and then tanglefoot on that, but if you can figure out a way to keep the ants out of the tree, the predators will come take care of the rest. But the ants actually harvest the insects for their honeydew, and they protect them from predators. And they tickle them to make them create honeydew. The ants do.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like milking
Yeah,
the aphids.
it's pretty amazing.
I have a question that might have just come to me, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to read it, Cam.
Sure.
Do you cover crop once when you plant the tree?
I cover crop 3 times a year.
Yeah.
I cover crop every season. In fact, I just mowed down some cover crop in my vegetable garden yesterday and threw some more seeds down. So I always have stuff growing
Yeah, so you're cover cropping all the time.
all the time. There's always something growing.
Roots in the ground.
Roots in the ground. Lyngso actually has a video of my cover crop class that I did. If you want to learn more about cover cropping and the wonderful benefits of it and how we can save the planet.
Yeah, I share that recorded link on the chat. So folks want to just scroll up and find that link.
Oh, cool.
It's a great class.
It's my new passion. Save the planet.
You know, regarding that cover class, someone had asked, I forget where the question is now, but can you do cover crops in containers
Yes.
if you're growing container, you know?
If it's a big enough container, I mean, if it's a pot this big, I wouldn't bother. But like even in my orchids, I have other stuff growing.
Yeah, and most citrus, if the question has to do with citrus, you're going to have citrus in a big pot anyway.
Yeah,
So
and a wine barrel.
yeah, so you can definitely cover crop or have. The idea with cover cropping is covering this. Well, there's a bunch of ideas, but one of them is to cover the soil and things that'll add nutrients to the soil. So I mean, you wouldn't have to do California wildflower or something in your citrus. You could put succulents around it, or you could put other stuff around it.
Yeah, but if you are growing in a container, you will need to do some fertilizing because it's not soil.
Yeah, yeah, it's not soil, and you don't have the whole soil food web feeding the plant, so you are going to have to fertilize.
Yeah, although if you did cover crop, you'd be adding carbon to your soil, so you would still get that benefit.
Yeah.
So there were a few more questions regarding bearing fruit and how to increase the yield and the taste and all that. And, you know, you had mentioned earlier that it takes about 3 years for the citrus trees to bear fruit.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to just sort of bring that up again, because the younger trees, like 1-year-old, 3-year-old trees may not even bear that great of fruits.
Yeah.
Following up on that, this person has a very large Washington orange planted in 1960. And last summer with the smoke and extreme heat, the leaves started looking sort of like folded in and colors really dull. So they're asking if there's anything that they can do to improve the tree.
Um,
And this is obviously like a really well-established.
yeah, clearly. You know, I would, citrus, oh, I didn't mention this. Citrus like to get hosed off or sprayed off. They, you know, they don't like to be dusty and they do like to get wet. They're from the tropics, so they're used to getting rained on a lot. So I would hose it off. I would cover crop and I would mulch. And I would do a nice diverse cover crop of, you know, flowers and grasses. And I think they'll see it perk up.
Oh, thank you. I did hose it off every couple days. I
Yeah,
don't know if you can see the tree or not. So
I think we may have lost.
yeah. I mean, I can see the tree and it almost looks like frost damage, and I'm sure that's fire damage. Yeah, this time of year.
I worried so much about it.
You know, this spring, you might want to prune it a little bit. It's pretty dense.
Yeah.
But I would go ahead and, you know, I actually would probably give it a nice layer of compost around the drip line and put some cover crop seeds on top of that compost and then mulch on top of the cover crop seeds.
Okay,
And I think that will help it a lot.
okay.
And then this spring, after the danger of frost is passed,
Mm-hmm.
out some of it so you can get some sunlight getting in there.
Yeah, I know when agriculture came, and I had another tree, you know, they put out those traps, they were trapping
Yeah,
bugs, they were spraying. They said they wanted it dense because it made its own humidity, it made its own atmosphere, and that was healthier. So that's why I've left.
Yeah.
I can trim it, yeah.
You know, I think, Ken, it's hard to hear Denise talk. I wonder if it's best to go ahead and move on.
Yeah, I was just
Thank you.
about to propose that. Sorry about that, Denise. It's kind of hard to hear, but we've got quite a few questions here to address. So the next one is pruning again. What's the best time of the year to prune? I know you had mentioned early spring. Mine is completely full. So this person's tree is completely full right now and will peak in early March, and they're in San Francisco. Do they prune while it's still fruiting or wait until it's done?
you know, in San Francisco, you're probably getting production all the time. So you're gonna have to prune some of the fruit off. But in San Francisco, you could prune anytime because you don't have danger of frost. If you live in an area with frost, you don't want to prune after September because that new growth is more susceptible to frost damage. But if you're in a frost-free zone, you can prune anytime. I just pruned mine, well, probably a month ago.
So another question regarding pruning is this person has a Satsuma mandarin tree and they've propped up some of the drooping branches, and those branches that they propped up did not flower, yet the ones that they left drooping did seem to flower.
Give it another year.
Yeah. Okay, and this person has some misshaped lemons and they have fingers on them. Is that normal? Is that just a type of lemon?
Well, if they bought Buddha's hand, then it's normal. Otherwise, they have probably a little insect in there.
I think it's a little psyllid, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it probably is a little psyllid. Hopefully it's not the Asian citrus psyllid, which I doubt it is.
No, it's a different psyllid that causes Buddha's hand on a normal citrus.
So it's some sort of a pest infection, really.
Yeah,
I think that's what Kevin Raftery told me.
huh, okay. Yeah, it's probably a little insect that's causing some deformation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay. Can you use laundry, like great water, to water citrus or fruit trees?
I can answer this out of a class I took.
Okay, good.
I wouldn't put any gray water on anything edible. I think it's fine to put it on your landscape and good to put it on your landscape, but on the off chance there's something from your laundry water that you do not want to get onto an edible plant, I would.
Like fecal matter?
Exactly. I didn't want to say it, but there it is. But I was taught from it was called Laundry to Landscape, a class I took, and they said don't put any laundry water onto anything you're going to eat.
There you
Okay.
go.
And we do have the laundry to landscape class coming up later this year. We can discuss some of that. And the common thing that's discussed is it's really depending on the dyes that are used in your fabric. And most of us are not very conscious about the clothes that we purchase and wash. And, you really don't want that going into your soil and feeding the trees that you consume food out of. So, and plus the laundry detergent, like Lisa had mentioned. Okay, so moving on to the next question is, why do oranges split while on the tree?
That is a water issue. What happens is Lisa and I went and helped this person with their landscape, and all of their oranges were split. And what happened is it had been drought stressed for years, and then it got watered. And that overabundance of water caused the fruit to swell and split faster than the rind could keep up with it. I looked it up because we came across that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's same with tomatoes and other stuff. If all of a sudden you see it split, it's usually drought stress followed by too much water.
Okay. Black spots on Meyer lemon and blood oranges tree. That's just a comment. So do you know what causes the black spots? I'm guessing.
On the fruit itself?
Not sure, just says the trees. So I'm assuming probably the leaves. If they'd like to jump in there, welcome to.
Yeah, I would go to the UCIPM website and see if they have something about that. That's not something I'm familiar with.
Yes, my name is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
There was a question earlier. I had posted my question earlier, but I hadn't discussed what kind of trees they were. Yeah, it's black spots all over the leaves. I thought it was citrus black spot disease.
I haven't heard of that disease.
Yeah, I will try the UCIPM website.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it in? Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know.
Okay, no problem. Appreciate your help. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so Kathleen, what are your thoughts on grafting Valencia scion to a healthy navel tree?
Yeah, go for it.
Give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, the worst you can do is the graft won't take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. I mean, I haven't personally grafted, but I've had people graft onto my trees and
Okay.
like, I don't know,
Sometimes
one
it
out
takes,
of,
sometimes it doesn't. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to say like 1 out of 10 takes.
So this question is regarding a grafted citrus tree in a container with limited space. Is the grafted 3 citrus viable? If not, what is? So I'm guessing it's, and this person can jump in. I think it's Desiree, I believe. I'm assuming it's the grafted tree with different citruses on a single root stock. Is that what you're referring to in one container?
Yeah, they have it for us newbies. I'm a renter and I can't plant on property and I have limited space.
And you can buy a 3-in-1 tree.
They have it available here in Southern California.
Yeah, I'd give it a try.
Thank you.
Sure. As long as it's going to be indoors.
No, I'd put it outside. I mean, it's Southern California. Right
Yeah.
now, we haven't had any frost.
Yeah, no, I don't think you probably will get any frost. I would put it in as big a container as you can, though, like a half wine barrel.
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so if you, back to pruning here, if you canopy prune a large orange tree, do you need to figure out how to paint all the bark exposed by the pruning?
You know, if it's a large orange tree, I think you can do the pruning without exposing the bark. That would be my goal. Is if it's a big tree, I would take it down and in, but not to the point where bark is exposed. And it might be a 3-year process. But if you do expose the bark, yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on how big the tree is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just not expose the bark
Yeah.
Okay.
if possible.
Alrighty, so let's move on. And this is a white powdery substance on the wood chips, on the mulch. And is that from too much water? And they just noticed it last week or so.
Ooh, that's fungus. That's good
Yeah.
stuff.
That's good stuff. You want that.
You can answer that one, Ken.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's pretty good. The mycelium growth on the fungus. It's just something that's decomposing your wood chips, and you sort of want your wood chips to decompose. So that's pretty good. The one thing that I will say though is you don't want to suffocate the flare of the tree, your citrus tree, with too much mulch. You want to give it a little bit of breathing room there. So don't pile up the mulch right against the trunk, the flare of the tree there. So
Yeah. And just one other word on mulch is you do have to reapply. It's not kind of a one and done. If you're putting 2 to 3 inches of mulch, in a few years, you'll probably have to put another 2 or 3 inches.
that's right. Suggestions on fertilizers for citrus. I have my favorite, but I'll let you both answer.
I would use, is it Down to Earth?
Yeah.
I would use Down to Earth citrus.
Yeah.
But I would actually, I would decide why am I fertilizing? Because I can tell you this tree has never been fertilized. It's been cover cropped. I would add compost and mulch before I added fertilizer, but if it was in a container, I would definitely use Down to Earth citrus food. But if it's in the ground, the nutrients the tree needs should be there. If you cover crop and mulch and maybe give it a shot of compost once a year. What do you think, Lisa?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. We'd have to know if container or not container. But I would say if it is in a container, I like the down to earth products a lot. They're high quality. I actually like their website, and they have a little pamphlet that is really good at about explaining the soil food web. But yeah, I can't think of it. I don't think I've ever fertilized. I just cover crop, and I put compost, cover crop, and mulch, and then I don't fertilize my trees or vegetables.
I'll second both of you on that. I don't fertilize in-ground citruses at all, just compost and occasional compost tea as a foliar spray. For my container citruses, like the mandarin oranges and stuff like that, I do fertilize with the down-to-earth citrus tree fertilizer once or twice a year. I've done it twice a year, the first time that I started planting the container fruits there. This year or last year, I've noticed, or the past few months, I've had some pest issues that I did treat with, and this is all in the container citrus. I did treat sort of manually, meaning I hosed the entire plant off and I just hand-picked all the pests. I think it's like the white fuzzy, I'm forgetting the name there, mealybugs.
Oh, yeah.
All over, and I hate them so much. So I just, hand-picked it. It was small enough for me to just go through and just sort of do a meticulous cleanup of all those guys. But other than that, I, compost, mulch, compost tea as a foliar spray, and only fertilize if it's in the container.
Yeah.
Okay, so grafting again. Any tips on adding grafts onto an orange or a Mayor lemon tree, and what's the timing if you were to do that?
I would do it in spring when the bark is slipping, and I would do a bud graft. I know that's what Four Winds does. Beyond that, I don't know anything.
Yeah, I've never grafted a citrus before.
Yeah, but clearly if you can buy a 3-in-1.
Yeah, it's been grafted.
And I know Four Winds uses the trifoliate rootstock for all of their citrus, so there's no reason why you couldn't graft.
Yeah.
I just haven't done it.
Yeah. Do you have a class on grafting, Cam?
I do. We have a class on grafting by Bob Yamamoto. He's excellent. He does all the fruit tree grafting himself, and kind of like does, seed. He'll plant a seed of a fruit tree, have it grow, and then graft that tree onto a rootstock. So I can ask him if anybody's interested in grafting particularly. Just look forward to that class sometime later this year. Hopefully we can still have that. And if not, I'll try to find somebody that can address some grafting, fruit tree grafting as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a fun question for both of you. What's your most favorite citrus and why?
Oh, I think I know mine. I love the Caracar orange. It's we have several orange trees, and that's by far my favorite orange.
I've always lived coastally, so I love Meyer lemons because they do great on the coast. Yeah. And I like they're not as tart as other lemons. They're delicious.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to pest issue now. Leaf roller and leaf miner are new growth on the lime tree. What should they do?
The leaf miner, you can take that leaf off and throw it in your green bin. Leaf roller, I don't know if you can see on my tree, but up in here, some of my leaves are a little bit distorted. That's the snails that got up there in the night. The snails, during the day, the snails are down in here. They stay inside the tree where they're safe from the sun and everything. And at night, they come up and they get the yummy little tender growth up there, which makes some of my leaves roll. I don't worry about it. I know they're gonna outgrow it. And the leaf miner doesn't bother me at all. I think they're kind of cool. But if it bothers you, you can take that leaf off and dispose of it. And pick the snails. Really, you need to like lay on your back and get under the tree to get your snails. Or ducks.
On the same note, I think I skipped this question earlier, but it had asked something about the leaves, using the leaves as mulch
yeah.
and also as compost.
Sure.
Can you address leaves with pest issues and without pest issues, both composting and or using it as mulch?
If the leaf has leaf miner, and leaf miner, you can see it starts out as a little tiny line where the maggot, it starts out as a little egg and it hatches and it becomes a maggot and it grows and it moves up and down in your leaf and the tunnel gets bigger and bigger. And then when it gets big enough, it flies away. If you can see the exit hole where the leaf, or you could hold it up to the sunlight and you could see if there's still a maggot in it. If there isn't a maggot in it, you could use it as mulch or throw it in your compost bin. If there is still a maggot in it, I throw it in the green bin or squish the maggot. You could do that too, and then use it. I'm trying to think of any diseases that I wouldn't use the leaves for. I guess if you knew for sure you had Phytophthora, you wouldn't want that in your compost pile, but that's really pretty rare in citrus. Scales, aphids, if you have a hot pile, that would kill them. I would certainly use them. Lisa?
Yeah.
With compost.
Yeah. I mean, any leaves that the tree produces, I would not hesitate, other than a diseased one, I wouldn't hesitate to use as mulch.
Okay. Moving on to a different question. This is about espaliers. Is it okay to espalier Beard's limes and Meyer lemons against a medium green colored house wall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have
And
you
we
ever
actually-
espalier citrus before, Kathleen?
I have never spaliated citrus, but on the Master Gardener tour, this was several years ago, there was some espaliated citrus. And they're great. You just have to worry about sunburn with any espalier. So, you can do it.
Yeah.
You might have to whitewash it a little bit, or you could wrap the, if you don't like the look of whitewash, which you might not if you're espaliering, you could put like a burlap cover on the bark, just something to protect the bark from sun. Because again, citrus bark is really susceptible to sunburn.
Mm-hmm. And we used to have a espalier class here taught by Arne Cornaz, and we may have that in the very near future. Just it's hard to get folks to do it virtually because these are sort of hands-on class, and we'll try to fit them in the schedule this year. So look forward to the espalier class as well. He does address deciduous fruit trees. They're a little bit easier to espalier and are used to it, but evergreen espalier, it might be, not that it can't be done, it might be a bit trickier.
Yeah, and you would need to start with a young tree. But yeah, it can be done totally. Because they fruit on new wood. So it's like you can espalier figs, persimmons. I mean, it's super easy to espalier something that fruits on new wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A question just came in. Just saw a white squiggly on a leaf on the navel orange tree. What do I do?
Oh,
You need to call the,
like white squiggly, like the Asian citrusillid?
if that's what it is, you actually need to call the egg. Is it the egg commissioner, Kathleen?
Yeah,
Because they need to know. Yeah, you have to go back to the white squiggly.
I'm going to the white squiggly.
Yeah, if it looks like that.
Yeah, I would look for the citrus with its butt up in the air like that. But yeah, I would either call the master gardener hotline and they will give you the egg number, or Google wherever you are, whatever county you're in, agriculture inspector, and they will come check it out.
Yeah.
Any of your local nurseries would know who to call, because they actually have to call them when they get a shipment of plants from Southern California. So you could also call your local nursery and find out who to call.
Yeah.
That might be easier.
Okay. I'm going to go over a couple of skip questions since we have 15 minutes here. So this is regarding a kumquat plant potted in a pot on a deck with southern exposure. Last year, the leaves were dark green and the fruit was prolific. And this year, the leaves are paler green. And though there were blossoms, there were no fruits that was produced this year. So any suggestions on what to do would be great.
Compost. It might be a nutrient thing. I would, if it's in a container, it might need fertilizer. Watering. I mean, those are like the two big things that come to mind. Lisa?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, it might just be alternate bearing also. I mean, if it hasn't changed its location, it's getting the same sun.
Yeah, but the different leaf look would make
Yeah.
me think there's something going on with its
Nutrients. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Ken, did it say it was in a container?
Yes.
It seems like they were planted on top of a deck with southern exposure. So I'm guessing it's in a pot. Yeah.
Pot. Yeah.
It does
So,
say that.
yeah. So I would think giving it some of the down to earth citrus food might help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another non-fruiting one. This person wants to know why their Meyer lemon, they're in Fremont, never gave them fruit for 20 years and the leaves are yellow and they water it once a month. And how do they improve it? They just don't want to cut the plant down.
I would water it more than once a month. I would water it probably twice a month for a good soak, like a 45-minute soak twice a month. If it's a 20-year-old tree, I would add compost, cover crop, and mulch. I would look at it though and make sure it's not suckered and that it is still a Washington navel. It could be that the rootstock took over and that's the issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, they're patient. 20 years is a long time.
So Kathleen, if this was the case, it actually happened to me with one of the grafted apple trees. Luckily, I caught it and was able to stop, the rootstock from taking over.
Yeah.
If this was the case for them, there's no hope, right? It's not going to fruit, essentially.
Well, it will, if it does fruit, it's going to be the trifoliate, which is not a desirable fruit at all.
Yeah.
They could try grafting back onto it, but Yeah, I mean, that would be a shame after 20 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So what's, there's a question on what's the difference between a regular Meyer lemon and an improved Meyer lemon?
Oh, I know the answer to this. The, all the Meyer lemons you buy now are improved Meyer lemon. It is in the 1930s, there was a disease that hit, I think it was the 1930s. There was a disease that hit Meyer lemons and it killed them. And the people at Four Winds developed a different Meyer lemon, or found a different Meyer lemon, which is called the improved Meyer lemon. But any Meyer lemon you buy today is an improved Meyer lemon.
And Kathleen, is there now like a new and improved Meyer lemon? Is there like a third generation of improved Meyer?
Not that I know of, but why do you ask?
Because I thought there's even a like new and improved Meyer, like,
Go on Four Winds website and look,
okay, I'll do that.
like right now.
I will.
So we're jumping back to cover crops here. So do nasturtiums or poppies make good cover crops for citrus? And are the crops in the slide photo clover or wood sorrel? I have a bunch of sorrel growing under my citrus and I always wonder if I should leave it or mulch over it.
In the slide, it's clover, but it is white clover, and it has actually become a bit of a nuisance because it doesn't winter kill in the coastal area. Nasturtium, any of those would be fine cover crops. Something growing is better than nothing growing. Just make sure your nasturtium doesn't climb up into your tree and become a pest or a nuisance. That's what I would say.
There was another question on when is your cover crop going to be of help?
As soon as it starts photosynthesizing.
And we might want to say for those who aren't, if you don't go watch the cover crop thing, yeah, the idea is you let the cover crop grow for a little while, cut it down, replant, cut it, and it's just called chop and drop. So you can just chop it right in place, let it drop it and be a mulch, add some nitrogen to your soil and keep sowing that seed.
Yeah, always have something growing.
Yeah. I'm on Four Winds, so it's fourwindsgrowers.com. And you're right, I just see an improved Meyer lemon. I don't see like a new and improved Meyer lemon. So just improved Meyer semi-dwarf lemon tree, $29.
Pretty good.
Okay, so I don't think I have any more questions unless someone want to jump in, last minute questions.
I think that's good. That's a long time to let people sit down, get outside and garden, everybody.
Yeah, it's nice out.
Oh, sorry. There's a question of black mold. Any remedies to black mold?
Well, again, that's city mold. So that's the honeydew excrement from an insect you have. That's just like an indicator that there's a insect up in your tree, and that's its excrement. It's honeydew, drops down on the leaves. It's really sugary and delicious, and it becomes moldy.
Yeah.
So the mold just indicates something else. So you probably have aphids or scale, and I would blast it with water and go from there.
So they're saying their mold is in winter and is on the fruit, and they don't see any honeydew.
Oh, huh, that's weird.
Yeah, and they don't have aphids or scale.
I'd say call the Master Gardener hotline. They're required to research it for you.
Yeah,
That's a great resource. Yeah, you could take a picture and just send it in, and it's a great resource.
yeah.
And they're saying that they've had it 2 years in a row after 20 years.
Huh, that's weird. I don't know.
Question about using de-still compost under citrus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's my
a big,
favorite.
that's a big thumbs up.
You don't need a ton. Just like depending on how big your citrus is. Several bags.
Yeah, maybe like a 1/4 inch over the whole underneath where the canopy is.
And
Yeah.
do you do that in springtime? Or
Yeah.
fall or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we
I would
would.
do it anytime.
Anytime.
And then on top of that beautiful compost, I would throw some cover crop seeds if you want, or mulch it because you don't want your compost to get damaged by the sun.
Okay. So this is a specific question regarding watering. Do you water the Eureka lemon more frequently than the Meyer lemon?
No. Do you?
No. I think.
No, I think all citrus are about the same. You know, it depends on how big it is, how long it's been in the ground, and the reason that it depends on that is the root structure.
Mhm.
If it's a little tree, it needs to be watered more often because its roots aren't out getting their own water. But
Mhm.
if it's a good sized tree, once a week. If it's like 5 years or older, probably twice a month.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how do you water your citrus, with a sprinkler, night or day?
I have mine on drip irrigation and it runs early in the morning.
Yeah. And I haven't watered mine since winter. We've had only a couple inches of rain in Northern California, but I have found that even just with the, it's pretty heavily mulched where my citrus are. And even with that, just a couple of inches, it's gone down into the ground, I'd say like 8 inches.
Mhm.
So I haven't watered yet, but if it doesn't rain pretty quick, I might have to.
Yeah.
Okay. So this person wants to know what you mean by not planting citrus on the lawn.
Oh, well, on a lawn, you're going to water more than the citrus wants
Yeah. Or in a lawn.
in a lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't really want a citrus tree in your lawn because you're going to water your lawn probably twice a week for the life of the lawn. And that's too much water for your citrus.
Mhm. So if you keep mulch 6 inches away from the trunk, is it the same for the compost for the cover crops?
Yeah. I would put the compost and the cover crop more in the drip line because that's where your feeder roots are. And the mulch, you just keep that far away from the trunk because you don't want it right up against the trunk
Mhm.
because that could cause rot.
Mhm.
And when you compost, cover crop, and mulch, do you clear the ground a bit first, or just keep layering on top of the last year's mulch?
I just keep layering.
I layer also.
I'm a very lazy gardener.
Good for
Which
you.
ends up being the best kind, actually.
I let nature do the work for me.
Yeah. So this person's baby Meyer lemon tree got eaten by deer, or deer ate most of the leaves.
Yeah.
They're wondering will it come back in the spring? But it does seem to be alive and it's making buds.
Yeah, I mean, I would give it a try.
Yeah. At some point, see how it does this coming year, but at some point, it does damage, it's hard for that tree to refoliate, and you might keep it for a year and see how it reacts.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all the questions. I think we've addressed most of them here, and apologies if we didn't address any of them, but we're right up against 3 o'clock now. I just want to thank you both, Kathleen and Lisa, for yet another awesome class, and we'll see you again next month for, you want to do a brief intro of your next class, what it's going to be on?
I think our next one is vegetables. I think February 10th, we're doing a class on veggies.
We are?
Yeah.
And I'll post the class sign up here shortly so people can kind of take a look at that. So
Yeah. And we'll have a little more back and forth in that class.
Yeah.
All right.
Alrighty, well, thank you
I'll see
both.
guys later. Thank you,
Thanks,
Kim.
everybody.
Thanks, Ken. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Debbie.
Bye.